I knew this guy in high school that was the worst. He thought he was better than everyone else. He thought he was so good at any sport he played. He bullied kids just trying to make himself feel cooler than he really was. He was arrogant. He was a jerk to girls. He constantly talked about himself. He was the worst. You know those people who are just constantly thinking about themselves? That girl who just thinks she is God's gift to earth? That guy who thinks he is on top of the world and no one can be as awesome as he is? They take credit for everything good that happens regardless if they had anything to do with it. Those people who just seem to live outside of reality. My grandma used to say they need a piece of humble pie. That guy I knew in high school was me. I was the worst. And as I look back at the person I was then, I'm heartbroken. I hurt so many people in my life. I ruined so many relationships just trying to be someone I wasn't, trying to live outside of the man God had called me to be. I needed a whole humble pie. Today we're going to continue to look at the story of Joseph. We'll be spending our time starting in Genesis 39. We're going to unpack this truth that God's calling requires humility. Humility is defined as a modest or low view of one's own importance. Sometimes we think that we are being humble by saying, man, I suck, or I'm the worst, when in reality, we still just only care about ourselves. C.S. Lewis says, humility isn't thinking less of ourselves, it's thinking of ourselves less. True humility moves the focus off of ourselves and on to others. The tricky thing with humility is that it's so easy for us to identify a lack of humility in others, but we never think we lack it. As humans, we love to feel important. It feels good to be the best at something or to be the more gifted than others. This starts to fill our head and our hearts with a higher view of our own importance, the exact opposite of humility. We often do this with our faith. I'm a much better Christian than they are. I sing or play an instrument better than anyone else in the band. I'm probably the best host on stage. I always bring my Bible. She never does. I can't believe he got that opportunity. I come to life groups way more than he does. We try and make ourselves feel more important than others. And Joseph has an interesting story when it comes to humility. He was born as the second youngest of 12. He was the favorite child. His brothers knew this and they didn't like it. And I can imagine Joseph walking around the house like, yeah, I'm the favorite. I'm better than all of you. Maybe like some of your younger siblings act. His father favored him so much that he made him a special robe. Again, I can see him walking around with this robe on, just being arrogant, lacking humility. His brothers hated him so much that they came up with a plan to fake his death, and they sold him into slavery. They covered his favorite child robe in animal blood and convinced their dad that he had died. So let's pick up his story in Genesis 39, verses 1 through 6. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything that he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and all of that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Okay, so now we see that Joseph also had some favor with God. It says the Lord was with him, and because of this, he also had favor with Potiphar. So even when we lack humility, God is still with us. When others lack humility, we have to believe that God is with them too. Joseph then gets accused of sleeping with Potiphar's wife, and he's thrown in prison. Joseph then finds favor with the warden and is put in charge of all the prisoners. We aren't sure if Joseph has had a piece of humble pie yet, but he continues to find favor with the people he encounters. God continues to be faithful to him. While in prison, Joseph interprets 2 dreams of the prisoners that are with him. One of the other prisoners was an important person in Pharaoh's house. Joseph interpreted this guy's dream, and everything Joseph said would happen, happened. Again, Joseph now found some favor with this dude who Pharaoh trusted. I think this is where Joseph started to become a little more humble. God had gifted him with the ability to interpret dreams. God continued to stay faithful to him through all his trouble. Even when Joseph lacked humility, God was with him. God had a plan for Joseph, even if Joseph couldn't see it. God gave him a gift, even if Joseph didn't know why. Even when we lose sight of the reality we live with, a belief that we are better than others, even when we take advantage of the favor we have been given, God stays faithful. He has a plan for our lives, and he plans on his will being done. The guy that Joseph helped interpret a dream gets out of prison and ends up back in Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh then has a dream. He wants answers. He's worried about his dream, and he wants to know what it means. Genesis 41, 8 through 14. In the morning, his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled." So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. So now Joseph is getting recognized for his gifts. It had to have felt good after all he had been through. His brothers selling him into slavery and faking his death, being accused of sleeping with his master's wife, spending years in prison for something he didn't do. This was his chance. God had gifted him with the ability to interpret dreams, and Pharaoh, a very powerful guy, needed his help. Could this be his chance to fulfill his calling? All that God had called him to came down to this. Here we go. Let's see how he responds. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I've heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." "I cannot do it," Joseph replied to Pharaoh. "But God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." There it is. He has taken a bite of humble pie. After everything, this was his chance to take credit and make a name for himself, to get back at his brothers, to make all that time in prison worth it, to step into God's calling. And he takes a step back and gives all the credit to God. In a moment when he could have made his value higher, when he could have taken credit and showed how important he was, he is humble and gives the credit to God. How many opportunities have we missed out on because we wanted to take all the credit for ourselves? How many times have we taken the opportunity to make ourselves more important when we should have given the credit to God, who has gifted us to do the things that we do? God's calling requires humility. And I've missed this so many times in my life. The opportunity was there, and instead of giving credit to God, I tried to make myself more important. And it just made me look like someone who was full of themselves. The chances I had to share the beauty of the power of God thrown away so I could feel better about myself. Today's culture and society do not agree with this. It's all about us. How do we get more credit? How do we feel more valuable? We spend so much time trying to create a following, trying to be an influencer, chasing after clout, than we do giving all the credit to God and allowing his will to be done through us. We are constantly looking for gratification from our peers instead of stepping into the calling God has on our lives. We walk around in our favorite child robes, trying to make ourselves feel more important instead of believing the truth that we are called by God and His Spirit lives inside of us. And we see this play out on social media. We only post the good photos of ourselves. We take 1 million photos of our family trip to Disneyland instead of enjoying time together, just trying to feel important. Then we constantly check the posts to see how many likes we got or how many people have viewed our stories. And I'm just as guilty. I've done these things. I've taken family photos and then asked the photographer if I can see the photo, and the first thing I look at is how good I look in the photo. Oh, I don't like this one. It's my bad side. Can we take it again? How many of us have done this? And I remember looking up ways to get more followers on Instagram, thinking, man, if I could just have this many followers, then I must be important. I'll feel important. All these social media platforms know this. That's why they come up with new filters every day that we use to make ourselves look different. They know we are looking for some sort of fake gratification so we can feel better about ourselves. And we constantly fall for this trap. We care so much what others think about us. And just in case you didn't know, you've already received the greatest like when God created you and sent His Son to die for your salvation. There's no need to go looking for more. There isn't a number of likes in the world that can compare to the love God has for you. It's time to shed your favorite child robe and step into the life God has planned for you. A life of putting others before yourself. A life of freedom from comparison and jealousy. A life of giving all the credit to our Heavenly Father, the creator of the universe. A life of humility.